I'm James Kostuchuk. I'm chair of the Portage la Prairie Heritage Advisory Committee, and it's our group that's looking after the restoration of the Wallace Mausoleum. Yeah, the Wallace Mausoleum project has been ongoing. Of course, it was interrupted by COVID-19, but we knew that this was an important heritage site. Of course, it's the site of two of the first victims of the Spanish flu of 1919, mother and daughter. Newborn baby actually succumbed to the flu, and they were placed in this mausoleum by Colonel Wallace, father of the woman who passed away. And it's the only mausoleum at Hillside Cemetery, and it's fallen into disrepair. Part of the reason being that in 1919, when they built the mausoleum, it was cold, and so at the time the concrete work probably wasn't done to the best standard, and it's fallen into disrepair. And so we wanted to do something not only to honor the memory of the Wallace family, but also to honor the memory of all the people of Portage la Prairie and the surrounding areas who succumbed from the Spanish flu in 1919. And in fact, the Spanish flu was particularly hard on a lot of Manitoba's Indigenous communities because they were isolated, away from medical treatment, living sometimes in close quarters. And so that flu had a profound impact on the memory of people who lived through that era. The flu actually killed more people than the First World War. So yeah, it was a significant event. The reason, why have a mausoleum? Because they're unusual on the prairies. It's not a typical way of families dealing with their remains of their loved ones. But Colonel Wallace, apparently the story goes that his daughter was very ill with the flu and knew that she might not make it. And so she had begged her father not to bury her in the cold ground. And so Colonel Wallace honored her last wishes, and he built a mausoleum. He also apparently imported a glass-lidded coffin. It's known locally as the Crystal Coffin. And the reason for that is he wanted to look on his loved ones in death. And, that might seem unusual to, our modern thinking, but at the time, spiritualism was quite a popular movement in Manitoba. A lot of people had lost loved ones during the war. And, there wasn't the psychological care and things that we would have today to deal with wellness issues. And so for him, it brought him great peace to be able to come out here and still have that connection with his missing loved ones. So the Wallace Mausoleum restoration is being done in conjunction with the municipal government, the city of Portage la Prairie, and the provincial government, Heritage. We also applied for Heritage funding to get an interpretive sign made for the site. So what we'd like to do in the spring is have a bit of a unveiling and have a little bit of a public event to kind of explain to people that this can be a place of mourning for victims of the Spanish flu. In fact, there isn't a national site of mourning in Canada, as far as we know, for that event. And so we would like this to be our contribution to that kind of recognition of that national event. We see many, as we know, war monuments are in every community, but really this may be one of the first, community commemorations of the flu. And I think it's really timely with COVID. It was a little bit eerie for me to be working out here this summer with Greg Roberts, who has been leading the restoration. We're having to wear masks when we go out into public, and that's exactly what was happening in 1919. So it's a motive to be out here. This is an interpretive sign which tells the story of the Spanish flu, and also the connection between the Spanish flu and the Wallace Mausoleum. And as I mentioned, it came in 1919. The war ended in November of 1918. The flu arrived at the time when people were doing a lot of celebrating, and so suddenly, instead of having welcome home parties and going out and socializing, everything was put into lockdown because of the flu. And then, the flu, as I mentioned, killed as many people as the war. So for many of the locals, you were hit twice. Everybody knew someone who was killed or injured in the First World War. And then it started striking families, this disease. And it's believed that part of the cause of the spread of the disease, of course, were soldiers returning and going to their communities. And so as a result, returning soldiers were from all areas of Canada. So now the flu started touching all areas of Canada. But the one, if we might take some hope from it, would be that the flu, within 2 years, it had all but disappeared, and people were able to get on with their lives. And so I'm, maintaining an optimism about COVID-19 that we can, hopefully beat that as well and get back to life as we knew it. The idea for this is, well over a year old, and so it was a very emotional experience being out here, and coming from town and seeing people in masks. And then as you look on the sign, you can see an image of a person wearing a mask. And, 100 years later, we're back to where we were. It's, my wish to see that we get through it, in much the same way that the people of Portage la Prairie did in 1919.